I woke up to the sound of scraping metal and breaking wood at 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday in February, which should have been my first clue that this day was about to turn into an absolute nightmare. I stumbled out of bed in my boxer shorts and t-shirt, shivering as I made my way to the window of my bedroom, squinting against the gray early morning light filtering through the curtains. What I saw made my blood pressure spike immediately. A massive orange plow truck with the Meadowbrook Hills HOA logo plastered on the side was backing away from what used to be my fence and mailbox, leaving behind a scene of absolute destruction. The white vinyl fence that I had spent 3 weekends installing last spring was now a twisted mess of broken posts and shattered panels, scattered across my front lawn like some kind of disaster zone. My mailbox, the nice black metal one with the decorative post that cost me $200 at the hardware store, was lying in the street, completely flattened. I threw on jeans and boots faster than I had ever dressed in my life and ran outside into the cold February air. The plow was already halfway down Birch Lane, continuing its destructive path through our neighborhood in Meadowbrook Hills, Colorado, just outside of Denver. I stood there in my front yard, breathing hard, watching my breath form clouds in the freezing air as I surveyed the damage. This was not just some minor accident. This was complete and total destruction of my property. My name is Zachary Vance, and I had lived in this neighborhood for exactly 18 months. I bought this house, a nice 3-bedroom ranch-style home with a 2-car garage, after getting promoted to senior project manager at my engineering firm. The neighborhood seemed perfect when I moved in. Quiet streets, well-maintained common areas, friendly neighbors. But I quickly learned that Meadowbrook Hills had something that would turn my life upside down repeatedly. An HOA run by a woman named Patricia Henderson, who took her role as HOA president more seriously than most people take national security. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of everything. The destroyed fence, the mangled mailbox, the deep gouges in my lawn where the plow had driven right over the curb and onto my property. The tire tracks were clearly visible in the frost-covered grass. This was not some unavoidable accident caused by icy conditions. This was pure negligence, possibly even intentional. After documenting everything from multiple angles, I called the HOA emergency number listed on the community website. It rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. Meadowbrook Hills HOA, this is Patricia. Patricia, this is Zachary Vance on Birch Lane. Your plow truck just destroyed my fence and mailbox. There was a pause, and I could hear her clearing her throat. Mr. Vance, the HOA contracts with a snow removal service to keep our streets clear during winter weather. If there was an incident, you will need to file a claim. An incident? Your truck drove onto my property and demolished my fence and mailbox. I have pictures of everything, including your plow driving away from the scene. Mr. Vance, I am sure this was an unfortunate accident. Please submit your claim in writing to the HOA board, and we will review it at our next monthly meeting. Your next meeting? When is that? March 15th. I felt my jaw clench. That is over a month away. My fence is destroyed, my mailbox is in the street, and you want me to wait over a month? That is our standard procedure. Please put everything in writing. She hung up before I could respond. I stood there in my driveway, phone still pressed to my ear, absolutely stunned by the casual dismissal. This woman had just told me to wait over a month for them to even look at my claim. Never mind actually fix anything or compensate me for the damage. My neighbor, Bill Richardson, came walking over from across the street. He was in his early 60s, retired from the Postal Service, and had lived in Meadowbrook Hills since the development was built 12 years ago. Zach, I saw the whole thing from my living room window. That plow driver was going way too fast, and when he tried to turn onto Maple Drive, he lost control and went right over your curb. Did not even stop to check the damage. Did you get any video? Better than that. I have my security camera footage, covers the whole street. I will email it to you. Bill, you are a lifesaver. He shook his head. This HOA has gotten completely out of control since Patricia took over 2 years ago. Last month, they sent me a violation notice because my trash cans were visible from the street for more than 12 hours. I put them out the night before pickup, like I have done for a decade, and suddenly it is a problem. I spent the rest of Sunday cleaning up the debris from my fence and trying to salvage what I could from my mailbox. The mailbox was a total loss, but I managed to recover the post and some of the mounting hardware. The fence was going to be a much bigger project. I had installed 30 feet of vinyl fencing along the front of my property, and at least 20 feet of it was now destroyed. The posts were snapped off at ground level, the panels were cracked and broken, and the decorative caps had disappeared entirely, probably buried under the snow somewhere. By late afternoon, I had filled 2 large contractor bags with broken fence pieces and was standing in my garage, trying to warm up my frozen fingers when my phone rang. It was an unknown number with a local area code. This is Zachary. Mr. Vance, this is Dennis Monroe from Rocky Mountain Snow Services. I understand there was an incident with our plow at your property this morning. That is putting it mildly. Your driver destroyed my fence and mailbox. I want to apologize for that. Our driver, Tony, called in this afternoon and explained what happened. He said the road was more slippery than he expected, and when he went to make the turn, the truck slid. He is really sorry about the damage. Sorry does not fix my fence, and why did not he stop when it happened? There was a pause. Tony said he panicked. He knew he had messed up and he just kept going. That was wrong and I have already written him up for it, but I want to make this right. Can you get me an estimate for the repairs? I felt a small spark of hope. You are saying your company will pay for the damages. Well, that is the thing. We are contracted by the Meadowbrook Hills HOA. Technically, they are responsible for any damages that occur during our work, but I want to help you out however I can. Get me an estimate, and I will submit it to them with my incident report. The hope fizzled out immediately, so I still have to deal with the HOA. I am afraid so, but I will make sure they know this was entirely our fault. Tony should not have been going that fast, and he definitely should not have left the scene. After I hung up with Dennis, I sat down at my kitchen table and started doing research. I pulled up the HOA bylaws and covenants that I had signed when I bought the house, documents that I had barely glanced at during closing because my real estate agent assured me they were standard. I spent the next 3 hours reading through 50 pages of rules, regulations, and procedures. What I found made my blood boil. The HOA had a provision that stated they were not liable for any damage caused by contracted services unless gross negligence could be proven. They also had a clause that said any disputes had to go through their internal review process before any legal action could be taken, and the review process could take up to 90 days. But I also found something interesting buried in the bylaws. Property owners had the right to perform emergency repairs to maintain property values and safety, and then bill the HOA for reimbursement if the damage was caused by HOA negligence. The catch was that I had to provide detailed documentation and at least 2 competitive estimates. I spent Monday morning calling fencing companies. The first 3 I tried could not come out for at least a week because they were booked solid with winter damage repairs. The 4th company, Colorado Fence and Deck, said they could send someone out that afternoon. A guy named Marcus showed up at 3 o'clock in a white pickup truck with the company logo on the doors. He was in his mid-30s, wearing work boots and a heavy canvas jacket, and he spent 20 minutes walking around my property, taking measurements and examining the damage. "This is pretty bad," he said, kneeling down to look at one of the broken posts. These posts were cemented in properly, but the impact just sheared them right off. "You are looking at 22 feet of fencing that needs to be completely replaced, plus another 8 feet that is damaged and should probably be replaced for safety reasons. And you need a new mailbox and post. Give me a number." He pulled out a calculator and started punching in figures. "For materials and labor, including removing all the damaged fencing and installing new posts with proper concrete footings, I am looking at $3,200 for the fence. The mailbox and post, depending on what you want, anywhere from $200 to $500. So total between $3,400 and $3,700. I felt sick. "How soon could you start?" "I have a crew available next Monday. We could have it done in 2 days, weather permitting." "Do it. And I need a detailed written estimate with everything itemized." "I will email it to you tonight." By Tuesday, I had 3 estimates. Marcus came in at $3,600 total. The second company quoted me $4,100. The third quoted me $3,800. I chose Marcus because he could start the soonest, and his estimate was thorough and professional. I compiled everything into a formal claim package. Photos of the damage, Bill's security camera footage, the estimate from Marcus, statements from Bill and another neighbor who had witnessed the plow driving away, and a detailed letter explaining what had happened and demanding immediate reimbursement. I emailed it to the HOA board on Tuesday evening and sent a hard copy via certified mail on Wednesday morning. Thursday afternoon, I got a response. It was from Patricia Henderson, and it was exactly as dismissive as I had expected. "Mr. Vance, we have received your claim regarding damage to your fence and mailbox. As I explained on the phone, all claims must be reviewed by the full board at our monthly meeting. Your claim will be added to the agenda for the March 15th meeting. Please note that the HOA is not responsible for damage caused by contracted services unless gross negligence can be proven. The board will review your documentation and make a determination at that time. Sincerely, Patricia Henderson, HOA President." I read the email 3 times, feeling my anger build with each reading. They were going to drag this out for over a month, and even then, they were probably going to deny my claim based on some technicality. I called my friend Dominic, who was a real estate attorney in Denver. We had gone to college together at Colorado State, and he had helped me review my purchase contract when I bought the house. "Dom, I need some advice about HOA law." "Oh boy, what did they do now?" I explained the whole situation, from the plow destroying my property to Patricia's dismissive responses. Dom listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he let out a low whistle. "Zach, you have a solid case here. The HOA is responsible for the actions of their contractors." That provision about gross negligence is pretty standard, but leaving the scene of an accident like that with clear video evidence of the damage being caused, that is going to meet the threshold. Here is what I would do. Go ahead and have the fence repaired. Document everything. Send them a formal demand letter with all your documentation and give them 30 days to pay. If they refuse or ignore you, you can put a lien on HOA property. Can I really do that? Absolutely. If they owe you money and refuse to pay, you have the right to secure that debt with a lien. In this case, you would put a lien on the HOA's common property, probably their clubhouse. It is the same principle as a contractor putting a lien on someone's house for unpaid work. Would not that get me in trouble with the HOA? Dom laughed. Zach, they already destroyed your property and are refusing to pay for it. What are they going to do? Be mad at you? File the lien. It is legal, it is appropriate, and it will get their attention real fast. Trust me, once you put a lien on their precious clubhouse, they will suddenly be very interested in settling with you. Marcus and his crew showed up bright and early Monday morning with a truck full of materials. I had taken the day off work to supervise and document everything. They started by removing all the damaged fencing, carefully pulling up the broken posts and digging out the concrete footings. Then they installed new posts, making sure each one was perfectly level and secured with fresh concrete. The work was meticulous and professional. Marcus personally checked every measurement and made sure the new fence lined up perfectly with the undamaged section. By the end of the first day, all the posts were in and the concrete was setting. They came back Tuesday morning and installed the new vinyl panels, making sure each one snapped into place correctly and was properly secured. By Tuesday afternoon, I had a brand new fence that looked even better than the original. The mailbox installation was quick. I had chosen a heavy-duty black metal mailbox with a reinforced post that Marcus assured me could withstand just about anything short of a direct hit from a freight train. He cemented the post 3 feet deep and installed a concrete collar around the base for extra stability. When they finished Tuesday afternoon, Marcus handed me a detailed invoice. $3,600, exactly as quoted. I included copies of all the material receipts and a breakdown of the labor hours. I wrote him a check, and we shook hands. I really appreciate you getting this done so quickly. No problem. I hope your HOA does the right thing and reimburses you. So do I. That evening, I sat down and prepared my formal demand letter. I included everything: the original incident report, the security footage, the estimates, the final invoice from Marcus, photos of the completed repairs, and a detailed timeline of events. I calculated the total cost at $3,600 for the repairs, plus $200 for the certified mail and documentation costs, and $150 for my time off work. Total demand, $3,950. I gave them 30 days to respond and pay in full. I sent it via certified mail with return receipt requested, and I emailed a copy to the entire HOA board, not just Patricia. 2 days later, I got a phone call from a board member I had never spoken with before. Her name was Susan Miller, and she sounded genuinely concerned. "Mr. Vance, this is Susan Miller from the HOA board. I wanted to call you personally about your claim. I saw the security footage you provided, and I am horrified by what happened. That plow driver should have stopped immediately." "Thank you, Susan. I appreciate you taking the time to call. I want you to know that not all of us on the board agree with how Patricia is handling this. She is insisting that we wait until the March meeting and that we deny the claim based on the contractor liability clause. But several of us think that is wrong. The problem is, Patricia controls the agenda and the board votes, and she has a majority. So what can I do? Honestly, you might need to take legal action. I know that is not what you want to hear, but Patricia is very stubborn, and once she makes up her mind about something, she does not back down. I am going to keep pushing at the board level, but I want you to know what you are up against." After I hung up with Susan, I called Dom again and told him about the conversation. "File the lien," he said without hesitation. You gave them notice, you made a demand, and they are refusing to pay. You have every right to secure your debt. I will draft the lien paperwork for you. It will cost you about $500 for me to prepare it and file it with the county. Do it." Dom worked fast. Within 3 days, I had a complete mechanics lien package ready to file. The lien named the Meadowbrook Hills HOA as the debtor and listed the HOA Clubhouse as the property being liened. The amount was $3,950 plus interest and legal fees. I drove to the Jefferson County Clerk and Recorder's office on a cold Thursday morning in early March and filed the lien. The clerk processed it without any issues, and I walked out with a stamped copy showing that there was now an official lien on the Meadowbrook Hills HOA Clubhouse. I mailed copies of the filed lien to Patricia, to each board member individually, to the HOA's management company, and to Rocky Mountain Snow Services. I wanted everyone to know exactly what I had done and why. The response was immediate and explosive. Friday morning, I got an email from Patricia that was so angry I could practically feel the heat coming off my computer screen. "Mr. Vance, you have made a serious mistake by filing this frivolous lien against HOA property. This is a clear violation of your covenant obligations and an attack on the entire community. The board will be discussing this matter at an emergency meeting, and you can expect to face consequences for this hostile action. We will be consulting with our attorney about pursuing legal action against you for harassment and damages. Remove this lien immediately, or you will regret it." I forwarded the email to Dom, who called me 10 minutes later, laughing. "Zach, she is bluffing. She has no grounds to sue you for filing a legitimate lien. This is just an intimidation tactic. Do not respond to her at all. Let them stew in it." The following Monday, I received a certified letter from a law firm in Denver called Patterson and Associates. My stomach dropped when I saw the law firm letterhead, but Dom had prepared me for this possibility. The letter was essentially a more formal version of Patricia's angry email. It claimed that my lien was frivolous and improper, that I had violated HOA covenants by taking legal action without exhausting the internal review process, and that I needed to remove the lien immediately or face legal action. It gave me 10 days to comply. I scanned the letter and emailed it to Dom. He called me back within the hour. "This is a joke. They are trying to scare you into backing down. Here is what we are going to do. I am going to draft a response explaining why your lien is completely legitimate, laying out all the evidence of their negligence and refusal to pay, and making it clear that you are prepared to defend the lien in court if necessary. I am also going to point out that their threat to sue you for filing a valid lien could be considered frivolous in itself. How much is this going to cost me? For the response letter and basic consultation, call it another $500. If they actually sue you, we will be looking at more, but I seriously doubt they will. HOAs hate bad publicity, and this case would make them look terrible." Dom sent his response letter directly to Patterson and Associates, with copies to the HOA board. The letter was beautifully written, methodically laying out the timeline of events, the evidence of negligence, the HOA's refusal to pay a legitimate claim, and my legal right to secure the debt with a lien. It concluded by stating that I was prepared to defend the lien vigorously, and that any legal action against me for exercising my legal rights would be met with counterclaims for my attorney's fees and damages. Then things got quiet. Too quiet. The emergency board meeting that Patricia had threatened never happened, or if it did, I was not notified about it. The deadline in the letter from Patterson and Associates came and went with no follow-up. I did not hear anything from anyone for 2 weeks. Then, on March 10th, 5 days before the scheduled board meeting where my claim was supposed to be reviewed, I got a phone call from a man who identified himself as Robert Patterson, the senior partner at Patterson and Associates. "Mr. Vance, I want to have a frank conversation with you about this situation. I have reviewed all the documentation, including the security footage and the timeline of events. In my professional opinion, you have a strong case. The HOA is responsible for the damage caused by their contractor, and their refusal to pay your claim was improper. Thank you for acknowledging that. Here is the situation. My firm represents the HOA, but I also have an obligation to give them sound legal advice. I have told Patricia and the board that fighting this lien would be a mistake. The lien is valid, the debt is legitimate, and if this goes to court, they will lose. Not only that, but they will end up paying your attorney's fees on top of the original claim. So what are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that we settle this matter quickly and quietly. The HOA will pay your claim in full, $3,950, plus your attorney's fees to date, which I understand are approximately $1,000. In exchange, you release the lien and sign a mutual release of all claims. What about the interest I am entitled to on the lien?" There was a pause. "I think we can work something out. Let me propose $5,500 total. That covers your original claim, your attorney's fees, and a reasonable amount for interest and your time. The HOA will also issue a formal apology for the damage and the delayed response." I thought about it for a moment. The amount was fair, and it would save me the time and stress of a prolonged legal battle. I want the settlement in writing, with payment delivered within 7 business days of signing. And I want the apology issued to the entire neighborhood, not just to me privately. I will see what I can do about the apology. Give me 24 hours to run this by the board. Robert called me back the next afternoon. "You have a deal. The board has approved a settlement of $5,500, payable within 7 business days. They have agreed to issue a general apology to the community about the snow removal incident. I will have the settlement agreement drafted by tomorrow." I called Dom and told him about the offer. He was pleased. "That is a good settlement, Zach. You are getting full compensation plus your legal fees and some extra for your trouble. Take it. You won." The settlement agreement arrived via email on Friday. It was straightforward. The HOA acknowledged that damage had occurred to my property as a result of their snow removal contractor. They agreed to pay $5,500 in full settlement. I agreed to release the lien within 3 business days of receiving payment, and both parties released all claims against each other related to this incident. I signed it electronically and sent it back to Robert Patterson. The following Wednesday, I received a check from the Meadowbrook Hills HOA in the amount of $5,500. I deposited it immediately and then filed the lien release with the county clerk's office. The following Sunday, every resident of Meadowbrook Hills received an email from the HOA board. It was short and to the point. "Dear residents, on February 6th of this year, a snow removal contractor working on behalf of the HOA caused significant damage to a resident's property. The HOA has now resolved this matter with the affected homeowner. We apologize for this incident and for the delayed response in addressing the damage. The HOA has reviewed its snow removal procedures with our contractor to prevent similar incidents in the future. Sincerely, the Board of Directors, Meadowbrook Hills HOA." It was not exactly the groveling apology I might have hoped for, but it was an acknowledgement, and it let the entire neighborhood know that the HOA had screwed up. Bill Richardson came over that evening with a bottle of whiskey. "Zach, I heard through the grapevine that you put a lien on the clubhouse and forced them to pay you. That is the most brilliant thing I have ever heard. Patricia must be absolutely losing her mind." We sat in my living room, and I told him the whole story over a couple of drinks. Bill was thoroughly entertained. "You know what the best part is," Bill said, pouring himself another glass. "Patricia has been telling everyone for 2 years that she runs this HOA like a tight ship, that she does everything by the book, that she protects the community's interests. And you just proved that she is willing to let the HOA get sued and liened rather than admit she was wrong and pay a legitimate claim. People are going to remember that. I just wanted my fence fixed and to be compensated for the damage." "Yeah, but you did more than that. You showed everyone in this neighborhood that the HOA is not untouchable. They can be held accountable." What Bill said turned out to be prophetic. Over the next few weeks, I heard from multiple neighbors who had their own horror stories about dealing with Patricia and the HOA board. Some had received violation notices for trivial issues, like having decorative rocks the wrong color or planting flowers that were not on the approved list. Others had tried to make legitimate requests for maintenance or repairs to common areas and been ignored or dismissed. In early April, I received an invitation to attend a special meeting of homeowners. The invitation was not from the HOA board. It was from a group of residents who were organizing to recall Patricia and 2 other board members who consistently voted with her. The meeting was held at a local community center, not at the HOA clubhouse. About 40 homeowners showed up, which was a significant portion of the neighborhood. A man named Greg Foster, who lived on Oak Street, was leading the effort. "Thank you all for coming," Greg said, standing at the front of the room. "We are here tonight because many of us are fed up with how this HOA is being run. The board has become unresponsive to residents' concerns. They have been heavy-handed with enforcement of minor violations while ignoring major maintenance issues. And they have wasted community money fighting legitimate claims instead of resolving problems fairly." He went on to outline the recall process, which required a petition signed by at least 30% of the homeowners, followed by a special election. "We already have commitments from over 40 households to sign the petition. We need 53 signatures to trigger the recall election. If you are interested in signing or helping with this effort, please see me after the meeting." After Greg finished, several people stood up and shared their own experiences with the HOA board. A woman named Jennifer talked about being fined $200 because her contractor's truck was parked in her driveway for more than 48 hours while he was installing a new water heater. Another man, Carlos, explained how he had requested repairs to a broken fence in the common area behind his property, and the HOA had ignored him for 6 months until the fence collapsed entirely. When it came time for open discussion, Bill stood up and pointed at me. "I want everyone to know what Zach Vance did. When the HOA Plow destroyed his fence and mailbox, and Patricia refused to pay for the damage, Zach did not just roll over and accept it. He documented everything, got proper estimates, made a formal demand, and when they still refused to pay, he put a legal lien on the clubhouse. The HOA settled with him within weeks. That is how you hold these people accountable." Several people turned to look at me, and I felt my face flush. I had not expected to become the poster child for HOA resistance. After the meeting, at least a dozen people came up to me asking for advice or just wanting to thank me for standing up to the board. A woman named Rachel Torres shook my hand and said, "You have no idea how inspiring this is. My husband and I have been dealing with violations for our vegetable garden, which Patricia says violates the landscaping standards. We were about to just rip it out, but now I am thinking we should fight it. Just document everything, I told her. Keep records of all your communications, take photos, and know your rights under the HOA bylaws. And if you need a good attorney, I can give you my friend's number. The recall petition was filed 2 weeks later with 68 signatures. The HOA was required to hold a special election within 45 days. Patricia tried to fight the recall, claiming that some of the signatures were invalid, but after the management company verified the signatures, she had no choice but to proceed. The campaign was intense. Patricia and her allies sent out multiple emails defending their record and claiming that the recall was being driven by a small group of malcontents who wanted to turn the neighborhood into a free-for-all with no standards. Greg and the recall supporters responded by pointing out specific examples of poor management, wasted money, and unresponsive governance. I tried to stay out of the political fray, but Patricia made that impossible. She sent an email to all residents that specifically called me out by name, claiming that I had attacked the HOA with frivolous legal action, and that my lien on the clubhouse had damaged the community's financial standing. That email was a mistake. Dom called me the day it went out, laughing. "Zach, she just committed libel. Your lien was not frivolous. The HOA settled with you and acknowledged responsibility, and calling it frivolous in a mass email could be considered defamatory. You could sue her personally for that. I am not going to sue her. I just want this to be over." Fair enough, but someone should send her a response correcting the record. Greg and the recall committee did exactly that. They sent out an email with a timeline of the fence incident, explaining that I had followed proper procedures, that the HOA had initially refused to pay a legitimate claim, and that the lien was a legal tool to secure payment for damages the HOA had caused. They also pointed out that the settlement had been paid, the lien had been released, and the only reason the situation escalated was because of Patricia's refusal to handle the claim properly in the first place. The recall election was held on a Saturday in mid-May at the clubhouse. The turnout was huge. Over 200 homeowners showed up to vote, which was more than 70% of the neighborhood. I stood in line for 20 minutes waiting to cast my ballot. The results were announced that evening. Patricia Henderson was recalled by a vote of 138 to 64. The two board members who had consistently supported her were also recalled, though by narrower margins. The neighborhood had spoken decisively. A special board meeting was held the following week to appoint interim board members until the regular election in November. Susan Miller, the board member who had called me to express her concerns about how my claim was being handled, was elected as interim president. Greg Foster and 2 other recall organizers were appointed to fill the other vacant seats. Susan's first act as president was to send out an email to all residents outlining the new board's priorities: improving communication, responding promptly to resident concerns, conducting an audit of HOA finances, and reviewing all current violations to ensure they were being enforced fairly and consistently. I ran into Susan at the grocery store a few weeks later, and she stopped to thank me. "Zach, I know you did not set out to start a revolution in the neighborhood, but what you did really mattered. You showed people that they do not have to just accept bad treatment from the HOA. You stood up for yourself, you did it the right way, and you won. That inspired a lot of people. I just wanted my fence fixed," she laughed. "Sometimes one person standing up for what is right is all it takes to change everything." In July, I received a formal invitation to serve on the HOA's newly created Community Relations Committee, which was being set up to improve communication between residents and the board. I agreed to join, figuring that if I was going to live in this neighborhood, I might as well help make it better. The first committee meeting was held on a Wednesday evening at the Clubhouse, which felt slightly ironic given that I had put a lien on that very building just 5 months earlier. There were 8 of us on the committee, plus Susan, who attended as the board liaison. We spent 2 hours discussing ways to improve communication, streamline the complaint and request process, and make the HOA more responsive and transparent. One of the ideas I suggested was creating a simple online portal where residents could submit maintenance requests and track their status, rather than having to send emails that sometimes got ignored. "That is a great idea," Susan said. "We have money in the budget for a basic software system. Let me research some options and bring it to the full board." By August, the new system was in place. Residents could log in, submit requests, attach photos, and see updates in real time. It was not perfect, but it was a huge improvement over the old system of sending emails into the void and hoping someone responded. The regular HOA election was held in November, right after the presidential election. Susan ran for a full term as president and won easily. Greg Foster and 2 of the other recall organizers also won seats on the board. The new board was a complete change from the Patricia Henderson era. One evening in December, almost a year after the plow had destroyed my fence, I was sitting in my living room when I heard a knock on the door. I opened it to find Patricia Henderson standing on my porch. "Mr. Vance, may I speak with you for a moment?" I was so surprised that I just stepped aside and let her in. She looked older than I remembered, more tired. She stood in my entryway, clutching her purse like a shield. "I owe you an apology," she said. "When your fence was damaged, I should have handled it differently. I was so focused on protecting the HOA from liability, on following procedures, that I forgot the HOA exists to serve the residents, not the other way around. You were right to hold us accountable. I am sorry for how I treated you, and for the things I said about you." I did not know what to say. I had expected many things from Patricia Henderson over the past year, but a sincere apology was not one of them. "I appreciate you saying that. It takes courage to admit when you are wrong. I want you to know that losing the recall was the best thing that could have happened to me. I had turned into someone I did not recognize. I was so caught up in rules and procedures that I had forgotten about basic fairness and common sense. I am working on being better." After she left, I sat on my couch for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened over the past year. What had started with a plow destroying my fence had turned into a neighborhood uprising, a recall election, and ultimately a complete transformation of how the HOA operated. In late December, the new board held a holiday party at the Clubhouse for all residents. It was the first community event in years that actually felt like a community gathering rather than an HOA obligation. There was food, music, and people actually seemed happy to be there. Bill Richardson came over to where I was standing by the refreshments table. "You know, Zach, a year ago I would have told you that moving to an HOA neighborhood was the biggest mistake you could make. Too many rules, too much drama, too many power-hungry board members. But looking around tonight, seeing how this community has come together, I think maybe HOAs can work if the right people are in charge. It still feels weird that all of this started because of my fence. The fence was just the catalyst. The problems were already there. You just had the guts to stand up and say no when they tried to push you around. Sometimes that is all it takes." I looked around the room at my neighbors, talking and laughing, kids running around playing tag, the new board members mingling with residents and actually listening to their concerns. This was what a community should be. My fence, which had been the source of so much conflict, now stood straight and strong along my front lawn, better than it had ever been. The mailbox, the heavy-duty one that Marcus had installed, had survived 2 more snowstorms without incident. The HOA had fired Rocky Mountain Snow Services and hired a new contractor who actually knew how to plow without destroying property. In January, right around the 1-year anniversary of the fence incident, I was promoted to Director of Engineering at my firm. The promotion came with a significant raise and more responsibilities. My boss, a woman named Ellen Thompson, called me into her office to tell me the news. "Zach, one of the things that impressed us most about your work this year was not just your technical skills, but your ability to handle conflict constructively. You dealt with that HOA situation with professionalism and persistence, and you got results. That is exactly the kind of leadership we need in this role." It struck me that the whole fence debacle, as stressful as it had been, had actually helped my career. I had learned to stand up for myself, to document everything, to know my rights, and to follow through on my commitments. Those were valuable skills in any context. On a cold Saturday morning in early February, exactly 1 year after the plow had destroyed my fence, I was drinking coffee in my kitchen when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find Marcus from Colorado Fence and Deck standing on my porch. "Marcus, what brings you by?" I was in the neighborhood doing an estimate for another homeowner, and I wanted to stop by and see how your fence is holding up. That was a crazy situation last year. The fence looks perfect. Your crew did excellent work. I am glad to hear it. You know, your situation actually helped my business. After word got around about how you handled the HOA, I had 3 other homeowners in this neighborhood call me for work. They all said they wanted to hire the same company that Zach Vance used. We walked out to look at the fence together. It was still in perfect condition, showing no signs of wear despite a year of Colorado weather. The mailbox stood solid and unmovable, exactly as it should be. "You ever have any more trouble with the HOA?" Marcus asked. "No, actually. They are completely different now. New board, new attitude, new procedures. It is like night and day. Good. No one should have to fight their own neighborhood association just to get legitimate damages repaired." After Marcus left, I stood in my driveway for a few minutes, looking at my house and my fence and my mailbox. This time last year, I had been standing in almost the same spot, surveying the destruction, angry and frustrated and not sure what to do. Now, 1 year later, everything was better than it had been before the incident. Sometimes, I realized, fighting back against injustice does not just fix your immediate problem. It can change entire systems, inspire other people, and make your community a better place for everyone. The key is having the courage to stand up for yourself and the persistence to see it through. The fence that the HOA Plow had destroyed became a symbol in the neighborhood. People would point it out when they drove by, telling the story to visitors and new residents. "See that fence? That is Zach Vance's house. He is the guy who put a lien on the clubhouse when the HOA refused to pay for the damage they caused. Changed the whole neighborhood." I never intended to become a neighborhood legend. I just wanted my fence fixed and to be fairly compensated for the damage. But sometimes doing the right thing, standing up for yourself, and refusing to back down when you know you are in the right can have consequences far beyond what you ever imagined. The following summer, a new family moved into a house 3 doors down from mine. They had a young son, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and a golden retriever. I was mowing my lawn one Saturday when the father, a man about my age named Marcus Williams, came walking over to introduce himself. "Hi, I am Marcus. We just moved in last week. Are you Zach?" "That is me." "Welcome to the neighborhood." "Thanks. I have to tell you, when we were considering buying this house, our real estate agent told us about what happened with your fence and how you dealt with the HOA. That actually made us more comfortable about moving here, knowing that the community holds the HOA accountable. It was strange to think that my fence incident had become part of the neighborhood lore, something that real estate agents mentioned to potential buyers. But I supposed it showed that what had happened really had made a difference. The Meadowbrook Hills HOA continued to evolve and improve under Susan's leadership. They established new policies for handling damage claims, requiring immediate response and resolution within 30 days. They created a reserve fund specifically for incidents involving contractors. They implemented quarterly community meetings where residents could ask questions and raise concerns directly with the board. In September, the Community Relations Committee, which I still served on, organized a neighborhood block party. It was held on Birch Lane, my street, and the entire neighborhood turned out. There were grills going, music playing, kids running through sprinklers, and neighbors who had lived next door to each other for years but barely knew each other finally having real conversations. At one point during the party, Susan pulled me aside. "Zach, I want you to know that the board is considering giving you a community service award at the annual meeting in November. What you did last year fundamentally changed how this HOA operates, and we want to recognize that. That is really not necessary. I just did what anyone should do when they are treated unfairly. That is exactly why we want to recognize you, because you did what you should do, and that inspired others to do the same. You showed people that they have power, that they do not have to accept bad treatment, and that systems can change if people are willing to stand up." The annual meeting in November was packed. Over 100 residents attended, which was unprecedented. Susan gave a year-in-review presentation highlighting the changes that had been made, the improvements in communication and responsiveness, and the positive feedback the new board had received. Then she called me up to the front of the room. "This year, the board is creating a new award called the Community Advocacy Award. This award recognizes residents who stand up for what is right and help make Meadowbrook Hills a better place for everyone. Our inaugural recipient is Zachary Vance." There was applause as I walked to the front, feeling embarrassed but also proud. Susan handed me a framed certificate and shook my hand. "Zach, thank you for having the courage to hold this HOA accountable. Thank you for showing us that rules and procedures should serve the community, not the other way around. And thank you for inspiring all of us to expect better and demand better from our HOA leadership." I said a few brief words, thanking everyone for their support and emphasizing that the real heroes were the people who had organized the recall, served on the new board, and worked to make the neighborhood better. But I knew, and everyone in that room knew, that it all started with a plow, a fence, a mailbox, and a homeowner who refused to accept injustice. As I drove home that night, the framed certificate sitting on my passenger seat, I thought about everything that had happened over the past 22 months. It had been stressful, frustrating, and at times overwhelming. I had spent money on attorneys and repairs, time on documentation and meetings, and energy on fighting a system that should have been working for me in the first place. But I had also learned invaluable lessons about standing up for myself, about the power of documentation and persistence, about the importance of knowing your rights, and about the fact that one person really can make a difference. The fence that had been destroyed was now stronger than ever. The HOA that had been unresponsive and hostile was now effective and fair. The community that had been divided and frustrated was now united and engaged. My fence became more than just a fence. It became a reminder that when you are in the right, when you document everything, when you follow proper procedures, and when you are willing to stand up to those in power, you can win. You can get justice. You can create change. And sometimes, all it takes is one person refusing to back down, one legitimate lien on a clubhouse, and one destroyed fence to transform an entire community. The plow that destroyed my fence on that cold Sunday morning in February ended up destroying the old way of doing things in Meadowbrook Hills and creating space for something better to grow. I never did find out what happened to Tony, the plow driver who caused all of this by driving too fast and then fleeing the scene. Dennis Monroe from Rocky Mountain Snow Services told me they let him go after the incident. I hope he learned from his mistake. I certainly learned from mine, though my mistake was different. My mistake was almost accepting the HOA's initial dismissal, almost waiting the 30 days for them to deny my claim, almost giving up before the fight even started. The fence stands today, perfect and white against my green lawn, with a heavy-duty mailbox standing guard beside it. Every time I pull into my driveway, I see that fence and remember the journey it represents. It is not just vinyl posts and panels. It is a monument to accountability, to justice, to the power of one person standing up and saying no when everyone expects you to just go along. And that, I think, is worth more than any fence could ever cost.